Welcome inside the Paris Sea Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. And we can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. And it's been a long time coming, talking to this cat. A guy who has never seen a string instrument that he didn't want to devour and learn all the sonic nature of it and the sonic expansion of it. He's an inventor of instruments. He's collaborated with many luminaries and also unsung cats that have made up our musical lexicon in the world. And it's a high honor. David Lindley, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thanks, Jake. Good to be here.
It's good to hear you, brother. You know, we let in with that track from Kaleidoscope. I found that album a couple months ago, and you're playing fiddle on that.
Yeah.
I mean, when the fiddle? When did you pick up the fiddle? Because I'm thinking like Richard Green was basking with Scotty Stoneman down at the Ashgrove, and I'm like, Lindley was there. You were there with the fiddle. Talk about when you picked up the fiddle.
Oh yeah, it was the recording that I had of Alan Mills at the Winnipeg Folk Festival. He had a fiddle player that was his accompanist. That was Jean Carignan, who was a taxi cab driver from Quebec, and was a killer fiddle player. And he would clog at the same time he would play the fiddle, like Natalie McMasters. He would dance and do heel work and stuff like that, and he would play the fiddle, and it was just mind blowing. So I said, I want to do that. Okay, I want to do that. And then I started I had messed around with it a little bit and had heard some fiddle players from Indiana and down in the Appalachians, and really loved how it worked, and I got to watch really good fiddle players, and I said, I can do that. So I picked up the fiddle, and it was also for the Topanga Canyon Banjo Fiddle Contest, and I'd won a bunch of banjo stuff, so I went, well, I'll go for the fiddle now. So,
but this is the really important thing, because and I think you're the perfect person to ask about this. I mean, you have very colorful wardrobe on stage, but you're talking about how influenced were you by cats that were not? We go see performances today in music, and somehow we've gotten into this thing where we sit down and sort of stare with jaws open at facility and technique. But as opposed to, you're talking about this cab driver who's clogging or I mean, there's an entertainment component, and was Lindley doing the how did you learn the entertainment side of the bandstand? Because today it's about technique and chops, and I wind up staring at the wall most of the time.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I kind of do what I do, and I get up on stage and I have a bunch of different instruments and things. Usually not a regular guitar, because there's enough of that. So I said, well, let's try some other things, and I've been playing for a long time, and I get up on stage, and there's stories about the songs themselves, or who wrote them, and one thing leads to another. It's a very stream of consciousness. Sometimes it just comes out, and I paint myself into a corner, and then play the tune, So it's all kind of an experiment, to see, because I also do it. I do it as the person who's playing, and then I also observe what's going on, what I do, and then what the audience does, and it's really fun to kind of separate yourself a little bit and watch what's going on, because you learn a lot, So it just kind of, and I had enough of, just playing, because when I played with Jackson, I didn't sing a whole lot, or I would just sit there and play, and I'd play the fiddle, and then I would play the electric slide, and then electric guitar and stuff like that. And that's what I did mostly, and didn't get up in front of the microphone and take over and do that kind of thing. So it's kind of the result of playing that role for a while, being the multi-instrumentalist in Jackson's band, and then with Crosby and Nash and Linda Ronstadt and James Taylor and stuff for that period, which was when I worked all the time.
Well, no, this is, and you just sparked my memory. We're talking to David Lindley here live on Power Talk on the Jake Feinberg Show. I don't know if you knew this or not. I know you knew this cat because you played with Sugar Cane and you played with Lagos.
Yeah.
Did you know Freddie Roulette?
I know Freddie really well.
Okay, well, do you know have you heard what Freddie got mugged the other night?
Yeah, I heard about that, and I've been in touch with
Kimmock or someone like that up there. Anyway, listen,
yeah.
Here's the point. I want you to, this is the thing. I reached out to Freddie when his whole house got I think there was a fire. He lost almost, and I interviewed Freddie, but I want you to talk about the Freddie Roulette that you walked into when in the Kaleidoscope, or even what was he doing with his style that got you off?
Well, it was kind of R&B and bebop, and then it was the style of steel guitar that he played, a lap steel, and it's an 8-string, which is tuned different than what I play. I play a 6-string, so it's got a 6th chord, and then he's got some other weird string set up on the bottom. So he played this stuff, which was I never heard anything like it before. I was upstairs in the dressing room at the Family Dog and the Great Highway, which was essentially the Avalon 2, so in San Francisco.
Absolutely.
And Charlie Musselwhite was on stage, and I didn't know the people in his band. I didn't know who they were, and then we this sax player, insane sax player, started taking the solo, and I said, I got to see this. This is really good. What weird stuff, So we went running down the stairs, and me and Solomon stood by the side of the stage and jumped up and down, and it was not a sax. It was a lap steel guitar.
Wow.
Freddie Roulette sitting in his chair, a pipe in his mouth, and he had on a pink and black V-neck cardigan sweater. He was very neat, and very. He wasn't a hippie, like we were. He wasn't. It was the real thing, and it was like totally original as far as the kind of stuff that he was playing with Charlie, And it turns out that he knew all Alvina Ray, all these great Hawaiian guitar players, and he learned how to play stuff that no one else could play. He could play Holiday for strings with all the passing chords, and he would slant the bar to get all these different intervals and stuff. And it was like, and watching him, it was like watching a shaman, raise, another dimension from the earth. And I've never seen to this day, I had never seen anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, could you talk about? You used. He had bebop inflection, and could you? Could you talk about that? I mean, because one of the things that's fascinating to me is that I've interviewed Tootie Heath, and I haven't gotten to Sonny Rollins yet, and Coltrane,
really?
I've interviewed Lloyd, Charles Lloyd, Coltrane, Sonny, and Albert Heath, and many others. Did not start as beboppers. They were in R&B bands. And so okay, so that's been very revelatory for me, for somebody who was birthed in 78. So could you talk about the bebop inflected stuff that Freddie was doing, and also in your own playing. I mean, to me, jazz is a blending of all musics. And I wanted you to talk about that.
Yeah, he would do these runs every once in a while. He would play the kind of steel guitar stuff that people play with a little kind of, wows and things like that a lot of steel guitar players would play. A lot of the country western players would play when they played in the sixth tuning, which is what Freddie used. But it was tuned in such a way that he could get these scales and inflections that I never heard. I never heard any, especially rock and roll players. They didn't do that. Country western players at the time, it was, mostly pedal steel and all that kind of stuff. So the old console guitars, not a whole lot of people played. It was kind of archaic. But Freddie, being from Chicago and playing with all these blues players, he would play with, did an album with Earl Hooker, and it was Freddie Roulette playing the steel on it. And I heard that, and I heard the most beautiful vibrato I've ever heard in my life. I said, "Oh, what is that? No, stop, go back. No, don't play the next track. Go back, take it back, and start it again." Okay, so I heard that, and I went, "Okay, I'm taking this record." You don't get to have it anymore. It's now mine. Okay, so I took it home and I listened to it, and it was just. And then I heard this. How the hell is he getting all that? I knew it was steel guitar and all that, and then went, oh, it's that Speedy West kind of Alvino Ray, kind of jazz, bebop, Hawaiian guitar stuff when you have a sixth tuning, and there's some other tunings and things where you can do scales and arpeggios and stuff like that. And Freddie would do all this stuff, and it was mind blowing. And I never heard an approach like that before. He was totally unique. So I started getting into 8-string and trying to do that kind of thing. And I went, oh no, this is like, I had to have started when I was 15.
Really, it was mind-boggling.
Oh yeah, it was just brain scrambling. So and it was one of those things that you do, 14 hours a day. Okay, you'll get it if you practice 14 hours a day. Okay, I don't have the 14 years of experience with this instrument to be able to master it or at least get a handle on it. Barely getting a handle on it so you can improvise within this tuning was almost impossible. So, and then I also tried pedal steel and stuff like that. And then I got to hang out with Freddie. Finally got to meet him and talk to him, and he showed me a bunch of stuff, and it was, how to get around on an 8-string and do all that, and it confirmed my suspicions that it'll take like 15 years to really get good on it like he was. Right. And he could play stuff off the top of his head that would just kill you, And then there was some standard things that he would do, and but most of it just came off the top of his head, which meant that he knew exactly what he was doing, and he knew the geography of the positions on the fretboard or on on the instrument, so he could get around and down low, up high, wherever, and he just marched. He used a very light bar. He was a bakelite bar with a steel center or lead or steel center in it, so that and he's very heavy string, so that when he played, it didn't sound like a steel guitar. It didn't sound like a 6-string like the stuff that I played, where it distorted loco and all that kind of thing. It had a horn quality to it. And I went, oh, okay. Okay, here, this is an approach. I went after imitating singers is what I did. And Freddie went after doing horn stuff. So you hear, it's like Eddie Lang, the great guitar player. He went after playing horn stuff. Charlie Christian, same thing. And they would play all this stuff. Oh yeah, I can play that. Django Reinhardt played clarinet parts on the guitar, So, and I sussed that out, and I said, okay, this is good. Well, let's see, who can I go after and learn some lines and stuff like that. So I started my own thing, and every once in a while I'd run into people who had done the same kind of thing, and the most outstanding of them all was Freddie. Absolutely.
Well, we're all my spirit and love, because I have a great excerpt of him just saying the tuning is mine, and to me it's like, because I interviewed him, and it's just like Charles. It doesn't matter. Charles Neville, Sonny Stitt told him, you always want to make sure you have your own sound, and just to show you I've been on this journey for 6 years, and we have this game called Name That Voice. I want you to take a listen to this and the content, and then we'll come back and break it down.
Okay.
And it's really funny that Gary Foster and I, we taught. Gary was a clarinet teacher up on the second floor of Barry and Grassmick Music in Pasadena on Colorado and Lake, and I was the snare drum teacher, and so we worked down the hall from each other. And then also there was a guy named David Lindley, who maybe some of your audience may know.
Sure.
A really incredible, string instrument virtuoso guy, and played every kind of string instruments. But he taught banjo at the other end of the hall. So there was banjo, snare drum, and clarinet going on. I
love it, man. Dixieland.
Yeah.
You know who that is?
Yeah, that's Jimmy Keltner.
Jimmy Keltner, and that was from July 2015. And when he told me that, I was like, I want you to break this down. I mean, was that you were teaching banjo? That would have been the sickest Dixieland band with Foster, Keltner, and Lindley, man. That's unreal.
And there was a steel player that taught there too, named Ron Middlebrook.
Oh man, I don't know that guy.
Who played that kind of stuff, the console 8-string stuff. He had a 3-neck Rickenbacker, and I used to every once in a while go, if the door was open, I'd go in and look at it. He was a very nice guy and really knew what he was doing, and he also played like rhythm guitar, F-hole, archtop rhythm guitar, really good, and he taught that, and he taught steel guitar. So together, all those people together, Keltner and I kind of shared a studio for a while, and I would I'd get a Coke from the Coke machine, and I'd put it on this snare drum.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one day it spilled.
Oh boy.
I spilled Coke into this, probably priceless, old Ludwig or something, and he got really pissed off.
Wait, but it was but it was a full trap set, and he was only teaching snare, or
I don't know what the whole thing was, but the snare drum was prominent. There were other drums in there too, but the snare drum was, prominent. I think he was doing rudiments and stuff and marching stuff. He was, it was Keltner. I mean, he played with Gabor Szabo and all these people, and he's a really just fabulous drummer. And he also used to work behind the counter downstairs and sell stuff every once in a while. And I never got to do that. They kind of had this idea about me being some kind of not a real guy, a folk musician,
Right.
which was not a bona fide musician. It was like, well, yeah, the 5-string banjo. Oh God, hillbilly music. Oh, here we go.
Here we go.
Okay,
This has
and
been.
then
This is. I wanted. I need you. Did you play? So you. I mean, you were. Yeah, you were considered a folk musician, but did you play?
Yes.
Did you play jazz? I mean, did you play? Did you have a jazz gig at that time?
No, I never did. I had. I listened to a lot of stuff, and I knew all about the great jazz guitar players, and I used to get my instruments worked on at Milt Owens, who worked at Fife and Nichols, which was Hollywood and Vine, and he was in the repair shop. He worked at Uli Affles down on 9th and Broadway in downtown L.A. Great guitar repair guy, and then he finally ended up at M.K. Stein across from the Union. So,
well, I guess what I'm saying is this: like folk musicians. Okay, so you weren't a real guy. Jazz was. I mean, even though Keltner was a jazz snob and openly admitting that was still never accepted as American. It's always been consumed in Japan or Europe, not here. So who was considered a real musician at that time? Rock and roll was sort of just. I mean, who was a real musician?
Oh well, of the classical musicians, the jazz musicians.
The jazz was okay.
Oh yeah, because as a musician in Pasadena and Arcadia and that area, and L.A., there were a lot of venues, really good venues. There was one place called Dragonwick. Keltner played a bunch of gigs there.
No, he used to go see Lloyd and Hutcherson there. Did you go? See, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, I think Lindley must have played the Dragonwick.
No, I didn't play the Dragonwick. I played the Ice House, which was a folk music place. Wow. I went to see Charles Mingus at Dragonwick, and it was just world changing. And I at one point I was thinking, I want to do that.
The upright bass.
Yeah, I want to do what Mingus does, the upright bass. And I'd always been fascinated by it. And when I was a little kid, they wanted somebody to play the upright bass in the school orchestra, and they asked people to step up and try it, and can you do this? And I was kind of small, so but I was really strong, so I could play it, and the first time I got my hands on it, I said, oh, I know what this is, I can do this. And they said, oh, well, you're too small for this, It was, you're not, you have to be a little bit bigger. I said, I can sit on a stool. I can do that, and I said, I can do this, and started playing. I didn't use a bow. I started playing it like a jazz player.
Oh, where are the tapes? I need to see Lindley. Here's this. I want.
No, man, this is like I would like eat. Actually, I was about 10 or 12 or something like that. And they, it was really, it was kind of disheartening, and I said, well, fuck that. I'm going to go do something else. And I started, and by that time the Kingston Trio had started playing stuff, and folk music was rampant. It was a big movement. It was really, really, important kind of thing, and there were two camps. There was the commercial folk music, and then there was ethnic folk music. That's what they called it. And I liked all the bluegrass, and I liked all the old mountain music, and Gene Ritchie, and all the traditional, real folk music kind of stuff. So I that's what I went for. But I could also play the other stuff. So.
No, this is really important because I interviewed Miroslav Vicious, and he.
Oh, really?
I've done thousands. I mean, you have no idea how great it is to connect with you finally. But it's like, basically, he was like the bass. You talk about Mingus, the bass being used as an individual voice. He said, really started with Scotty LaFaro with Bill Evans, but
Yeah.
And then, people like Stanley Clark and Miroslav came in. But was a mind-blowing experience with Mingus just the power, or was he using the bass himself as an individual voice?
It was kind of the overall thing. It was a whole, the presence and the stuff he played that seemed to be impossible, and it was the sound he got. And he was kind of, he's kind of an animal, I went to school with his son, to Pasadena City College with his son, Charles Jr.
Wow.
Yeah, he told me a bunch of stories and stuff.
Well, no, I mean, I've interviewed, listen, I know that up in Canada, Charles McPherson was in his band, and there was a bunch of, white football players in there, and they were, drinking beers and obviously being extremely loud over the music of Mingus. Mingus jumped off the stage and got in a brawl with these guys.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is how people would go to blows over the music, Lindley, and to me, it's like, as a folkie, could you separate that line between commercial folk and ethnic folk?
Well, let's see.
Because
it was there were some people who were in both camps. Eric Weisberg, the banjo player.
Absolutely.
Eric Weisberg played with a bunch of different people, and he could play the traditional bluegrass stuff. He could play the old mountain 5-string banjo, traditional stuff. But he kind of, I used him as kind of an archetype to, go in, 2 worlds or 3 worlds, and he was really a good example of how to do that. And I said, well, okay. So I was forming my plan, at around that time, and he was just really good. Whenever I'd hear somebody playing, and I really liked it, it was usually Weisberg, So I went after the skill. I said the chops. I said I want to get really good on this, and I want to start exploring this and see what else there is, what can be done. And I would hear all different kinds of people play in different approaches and stuff. No, I don't want to do that. No. So, well, this and then I heard, there was a couple of banjo players that there's a guy named Billy Fair.
Fair, or is that
Fair? I think.
Faer, interesting.
Yeah, Faer.
Was he was an off the grid? He was more of an ethnic cat, or what was he doing?
Yes, he was.
Yeah,
he was, and he played all kinds of kind of classical banjo stuff, and he's a good friend of John Sebastian's. And I heard him, and then I heard Marshall Brickman, who he played this really unusual kind of style I'd never seen before. And then there was also the New Lost City Ramblers, Tom Paley, who played with his fingernails and all this stuff. It was more interesting. It was like, it's that whole thing about style over content.
Yeah.
Some people go for the style over the content. Well, there's much more content in what was called ethnic folk music. So and you also could get down and dirty with all of the real deep Appalachian banjo, Smoky Mountain banjo stuff, Ozark music, and the fiddle, and the hillbilly music. That fascinated me, and you would get this feeling. And I learned to recognize it because at the same time I was also interested in flamenco guitar, which kind of did the same thing to me. And I said, well, they're pretty close. What is it about these things? These different styles are from completely different areas, and what is it about this that really that I like? And it was the same thing. And then I started listening to all kinds of other music, and Sandy Bull was around, and he was playing the oud, and there was Hams al-Din, and I started listening to everything, and when I would go on the road with Jackson Browne, I'd have like 3 Alan Stivell cassettes, the Breton harp player.
Wow. Wow.
and shantung music of Confucius homeland. And I would have those. I would play those on the road when I go to my hotel room, and Stivell was a monster, and he was this huge folk god, figurehead in France and Brittany and Europe, all over the place. He was just unbelievably influential. He could really sing, and he could play that old style harp, beautiful Breton harp, and so I was on my way,
This is. I want to read you this quote and then have you extrapolate on it as it relates to Kaleidoscope. This is from Barry the Fish Melton, but up in the Bay Area, you had Yorma was a folkie, Jerry was a bluegrass cat, and folkie, and all the cats. And there are more bands too that that came out of that. Cipollina was more of a rocker, but Santana, but I mean the majority, Country Joe and the Fish, they were all folkies. And I just want to read you this quote from my second interview with Barry. He said, "We knew what jazz was. It was counterculture. If you understand jazz standards are really the corniest songs, like My Funny Valentine. But by the time you get to the middle of the song, you can't tell what it is necessarily because you drop the presumption of structure. You know what you're playing, which helps, but it doesn't sound like the song you begin with. You can do that through other kinds of music as well, and that's in essence what the music was driven to. We understood what jazz was, but nobody knew how to do that in traditional folk music. When you're really in the zone, the structure exists, but it only exists in your mind. You're no longer tied to it." And I just want Lindley, see, you weren't a jazzer, but you were incorporating that aesthetic in Kaleidoscope. I mean, you never played the same song once. The same way once, right?
It was, we played a lot of stuff differently. We would, we'd have a theme, and then we'd, elaborate on the theme. Chester Krill, who was the fiddle player and the harmonica player, just an amazing musician, he listened to jazz all the time. And so he would bring a lot of that into the Kaleidoscope, and we played straight no chaser.
Get out of here. Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Monk, dude. That's Monk, right?
Yeah.
You're playing Monk, man.
Oh, yeah. And then there would be, and then we would play a Balkan thing, in 7/8 or 5/8, and Solomon would take a saz solo and all the quarter tones and stuff, and people really didn't know what to do, and we just kept playing, kind of what interested us, what's interesting. So, and in those days there was freeform radio, Tom Donahue and all of them.
Oh, huge.
Oh yeah.
Huge.
And you would hear George Jones and then Ravi Shankar.
Exactly.
And then Jean-Luc Ponty.
And then Mahavishnu into Kingston Trio or something like that,
Yeah, all that, and it was, and then some more George Jones. And it was that way on purpose, which was a statement. It was a really eloquent statement, which is music is pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm.
And for the same reasons, and you want to get, without going into it, it showed everybody that all these people are going for pretty much the same thing, and it's all valid,
it's all music, and it's all music, and then the subjective part is that's either good or bad, but that's subjective. Otherwise, it's just all music. It's a Duke Ellington kind of philosophy, Did you?
Yeah, really.
Did you have a chance to cross paths with I remember from David Crosby, he talked about Ginsberg showing up with his partner on the Sunset Strip when he was with the Byrds, and they dance all night. Did you know the beats? Did you hang with some of the beat poets?
Not really. Later on,
Yeah.
I met, I think it was Ginsberg in San Francisco. He came to one of the Kaleidoscope shows and he introduced himself, and I met. Yeah. I was interested in the beatnik era. I was a very young beatnik.
You were a young beatnik. I want to know about. Okay.
Not a hippie.
No, they preceded. I want to know about the. So what was the stance? What was I think more to the point. It doesn't matter that you weren't like hanging with them, but what was the ethos and that? To me, there would have been nothing. You talk about ethnic folk music and how dense it is and how deep it is and how the appreciation of all music. I don't believe that any of that would have occurred without the beats. And
I don't think so. I don't think so either. It was a counterculture.
Is that the right word for it? I mean, I just want you to talk about a young beatnik and what that represented, because really what I'm trying to do on my show is just get peeps to think for themselves. That honestly is what my goal is. That's
a good way to do that. The beatnik thing was an entire thing. It was like I like Bud and Travis a lot.
Right.
They played that kind of French cabaret double classical guitar stuff and sang in harmony and all that, which was the European approach to stuff, which I loved. I thought it was wonderful, and I would listen to that and anything that sounded good to me. I would go after and tried. I heard Sabicas play flamenco, and that was a huge moment. And I said, I want to do that too. I'll try some of that out. And then I realized, of course, I had to have started when I was 7 years old, to actually do that and learn all. It's really complex, and it's traditional, and you have to learn everything the right way. So I said, well, I don't know, maybe some of that, And then I was listening to Ravi Shankar and classical North Indian music, and I loved all of that. And it was during that period that the Beatles, came out of all of that stuff. It was, to me, they sounded like folkies that plugged in.
Right.
I want to hold your hand is like the Louvin brothers. Jim and Jesse and the Virginia Boys. It kind of sounded like us. Oh, familiarity.
Interesting.
The
That's fantastic.
Harmony stuff, and that was it's okay to plug in. Okay, good. So that's what happened. Yeah. It's Garcia and I had a conversation once about the evolution of going from bluegrass music to the other stuff, and we kind of came to the conclusion that it was pretty much the same thing.
Could you just talk about that? What the conclusion? Where were you at before, and how did you come to that realization?
Oh well, he approached the Grateful Dead stuff as a bluegrass musician, and it was he used that approach, which was familiar to me because that's the one I used. Plus a bunch of other stuff too.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, did you? There's two questions with the beat approach. With Kaleidoscope, it was similar to the Dead in that there was no leader. What was the concept?
No.
The concept of leadership was collective consciousness, raising the collective.
Yes.
Right? I mean, isn't that what? Because you guys did not have a leader.
That's exactly what it was. That's exactly what it was, and it was an experiment, and it worked for a long time until there were different factions within the Kaleidoscope, which was the R&B blues faction, and then there was the Middle Eastern Balkan faction, and that was bound to happen in one way or another. And then there was also the pop faction, let's sell records and do all this kind of stuff. The record company didn't know what to do with us because we didn't fall into any category. And the same thing with El Rayo X. Nobody knew what the hell to do with us.
I think
So
that music holds up better today than it did. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, it's.
Oh yeah.
But wasn't that kind of the goal, or was it frustrating for you guys that you couldn't get regular airplay, or they didn't know what to do with you? I mean, how did you revel in the idea that you were sort of this eight-armed octopus in the bottom of the ocean, just swimming around?
Yeah, in the Mariana Trench, you know. So you kind of notice that. I mean, you pay attention to it, you notice it, and it's in your peripheral vision, and it's like a swimming pool that you swim through, but all the time you're concentrated on the music and making it better and sounding better and trying out new instruments, you know, new amps and all that kind of stuff. And let's try doing things separately, you know, and overdub and do all of that stuff. I mean, we were starting to get into all that stuff. So where we were in marketing, you know, at the record company didn't really mean that much. You know, the record company was kind of a, you know, there also. You know, they weren't, you know, we didn't work for them, and they kind of worked for us and tried to help us out, and luckily we got some people that were really good.
Would you say that it also had to do with the record companies were cool with it because you were making money for them, so they sort of stayed out of your way? It was before the bean counters and the efficiency model came in, which really just effed everything up. You know, it was like this was like, okay, you know what? We can't figure these cats out. They are on their own trip. But you know what? We're doing pretty well with the record sales. So let's just, I mean, to me, it just made sense until they had peeps coming in that didn't know that it was not their skill, but they were trying to push that. Did that become part of the industry, and did you feel that?
Yeah. We kind of saw that happen, but it wasn't in the area where we were. We usually had champions at the record company. It was in the Kaleidoscope. It was epic, you know. And there were a lot of the people that were in there were really cool. And the original guy who signed us was Stu Phillips, who was really knew what he was talking about. He'd come to the gigs, and so you know. The stuff the Balkan stuff that you guys do is, you know, that's really interesting. You know, have you heard Don Ellis? So,
oh, it was so hip, man. It was beyond.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's unbelievable.
You know, and we ended up doing concerts with him and stuff. You know,
with Don Ellis.
With Don Ellis.
Oh my, you have to be kidding me.
Oh, and it was one at the Aquarius Theater that we did with Don Ellis, and I remember, he was really encouraging, and you know, said, do what you want, play what you like, you know, don't try to, you know, sell records and stuff like that. Play what you like, and people will recognize what's good. So along the way, there were people like that, and people in the record company. I mean, at Electro Asylum, they were very cool.
They don't, you know, this is the other part of it is that, you know, could you talk about, I've listened to Kaleidoscope, many of the Kaleidoscope albums, but I wonder, were cats coming, were the live shows discernibly different from, you know, some people come to these shows because they want to hear what's on the record. But did you guys stretch out? And also, do you have live? I need to hear live Kaleidoscope. I don't know how much is really even out there, but was it different?
I have some of it. They made some tapes at the Ash Grove.
Oh my God!
And
acoustic or electric? Acoustic.
It was electric.
Oh my gosh! So could you talk? Go ahead.
I have some of that somewhere. I haven't listened to it for a while, but I can remember playing a lot of these concerts, you know, like the Sky River Rock Festival, and it was Stuart Brotman was playing bass, and Paul Lagos was on drums, and it was you know, both of those guys are major, you know, musicians, and it took a turn, and we found out what we could really do, and it just took off. And they're supposed to be a recording of that somewhere, and I think I know where I can find it. So that's a good project.
Let's make it a project. Where did you go?
Yeah.
Where did you wind up getting to? Like in that jam, where did you turn and go?
Oh, where it went. You know?
Good answer, man.
It did. It learned to feed itself, man.
Yeah,
it was
man.
like an animal, you know, and which is really the way to, you know, let something evolve, and you have this influence comes in, and you go, oh no, that's good. Oh no, keep that in there. We'll do that. That really adds something to it, and then what we need is something on top now. We need something, you know, and instinctively everyone would go and do stuff with what was appropriate, and then of course Lagos was a jazz drummer, so in fact he was recommended by Jim Keltner. When I asked Keltner if he would play with the Kaleidoscope, and he says, well, I can't now, I got all these gigs I got to do. So, but there's this guy Paul Lagos, you know, you should try him out. He was, and it was amazing. It was wonderful. He was just a killer player. So he added a lot of stuff, and when he would do drum solos, they were really drum solos. I mean, they were, you know, complex and wonderful and dynamic, and he was from Hell's Kitchen, you know. New York.
Those drum solos were only in the live. Those never showed up on record. I mean, there was only in the live shows.
No, only the live shows, and that's one of the things that in a way, it's a good way to do that, you know, because if people just play the record, that's one thing, and then if you get the reputation for, oh no, you should see them live, that's really the way to do that, you know. And we got the reputation for, you know, doing really strange shit, you know.
I need to hear this. I need to hear this live Kaleidoscope from the.
From that era. Yeah, that's the one you want. It was from the Incredible Kaleidoscope, which was the fourth album, I think it was. That was the era. That was Lagos and Stuart Brotman and Solomon and Chester and me, and it was so good. That was the epitome of all we've been trying to put together, you know, from in all the different elements and everybody's strengths and stuff. So it worked out. It didn't last all that long, but it was, you know, it evolved and grew, and that particular period was my favorite period. There's some stuff we did there that will never be done again, you know.
And I think that it had a profound impact. What's so invigorating is that it had a profound impact on a lot of other amazing groups of musicians. Lagos was a really gifted cat, but you know, Keltner and I spent a long time talking about Paul, and he had a lot of troubles too. He was haunted in some way, you know, psychologically. He had demons.
Oh yeah, he did, and he you know, he's no longer with us.
Right.
He had a house up in Washington.
That's right. Keltner used to drive up there, and he would drive up late night, and he would see the fires from the Watts riots overlooking the Lagos. Did you? That's what I was going to say. You must have gone up there and played and jammed with those cats up there.
Oh yeah.
This is unbelievable.
At Lagos House, Paul was a kind of, you know, an enigma. He had this you know, he was a health food freak. He raised his own food. He had goats, and he, you know, had goat's milk, and you do all this stuff, and then he shot heroin. So I said,
unbelievable,
Paul,
the dichotomy there.
Paul, have you ever considered that there's a conflict here? He says, yes, I've often thought of that. It bothers me a lot, but you know, I'll get through it. It'll be fine. So he, you know.
But what's so amazing. Go ahead.
He was interested in a whole lot of different things, and he was always searching for stuff. And he was the first person I ever talked to that knew who George Gurjieff was. the philosopher,
Right. I was just transcribing.
Armenian philosopher who started a whole bunch of things. He was a European, Eastern European who interpreted.
Well, no, he was the one that came up with the fourth way philosophy.
Yes, yeah,
exactly.
Ouspensky and Nichols and all that. He was the original one, and there's a great film called Meetings with Remarkable Men. It's after a book that he wrote. Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson was another book he wrote, but Meetings with Remarkable Men had some stuff in there that, everyone should see that. If you're interested in anything like that, especially that area of the world where so much came out of. And then he went to Paris, and then it became this whole thing, and the fourth way. The fourth way,
no, because that band that you might have known, it was also stretching ears out. Was Mike Knock, Michael White, Eddie Marshall, and Ron McClure. The Gurjieff. That's where Knock was telling me about that cat. That came on my radar. But going back to Lagos, the cat is he's raising goats. He's eating antibiotic-free food. The thing about this is the thing. I'm producing a documentary on Stan Getz right now. Stan Getz.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Stan Getz was this. The guy was a health fanatic. He swam across the Thames River, okay, in England one night on a dare. Okay, he was, but yet the dude was sharing needles. He was a junkie. It's like so. Yeah. That to me speaks more to the. It's all a mental game. Everything is. Once you know, that to me was. But was it? But Lagos was. Listen. Tying it back to Freddie. I have this Freddie Roulette album, and Lagos is playing drums on that, and I don't even know what. He just was very opinionated too. He was very pissed off about. He would get very upset about like labels or sort of. You talked about the. I've read in another interview about sugarcane. Those cats were just burning with cosmic energy. And and so you were marinating in that, dude. It's just to me. Yeah. You weren't checked out, and you didn't have a lot of devices or technology or books about how to. This is the Bill Keefe book on pedal steel, or this is the Pat Martino book on guitar. We're saturated with material. And you guys basically had an FM radio, and you heard the song once. There was no rewind button. And then pretty soon you just kind of had to go and make up your own stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Yeah.
Talking to David.
And then every once in a while we get to go see somebody play live. I went to see Jean-Luc Ponty play, and I went, that's fabulous. And then I'd go see Sugarcane Harris. When there was an earthquake in California, I think a bunch of people were stuck in London.
Wow.
In a hotel room. Sugarcane Harris was there, and the only thing to do while we're listening to the radio to see if Los Angeles was rubble or not, he played this fiddle stuff. And we all sat around, and it was.
Were you up at Lagos's house?
Well, no, this was in London.
Oh, this was in London. So he was
hotel room in London. And it was Sugarcane Harris. I was sitting right next to him. I watched what he played, and as a fiddle player, I kind of figured out a lot of what that was. How to play soul motion, the false harmonics and soul motion. He showed me what it was. He said, this is how you do this. This is how you do this. Don't press all the way down. No, you're pressing too hard. Don't press all the way there. See? That's it. So, and I got to, every once in a while, run into people like that, and I would ask them questions. I would always ask people questions. How do you do this? How do you do that? Why are you using your thumb? How far does your thumb go over? What strings does that cover? And stuff like that. So, and I took it all in.
Can you talk about how you continue? People are very guarded today. There's less opportunities for bandstand experiential learning. Younger cats, Gen Xers, millennials like myself, more insecure because we don't have the opportunities to play, 6 nights a week, 3 sets a night for a month
Right.
at a time at some upholstered sewer. Cost of living is insane. Can you just talk about how you continue to spread generosity in music and share? Sharing is the key. And
Yeah, it
cats
is.
like Sugar Cane and all the cats we've talked about, always willing to talk to Lynn. I mean, obviously they knew that you were going to take it and extrapolate off of it, but
Yeah.
point is, can you talk about generosity, how you continue to be generous with sharing of the music in today's world?
It's pretty much. I kind of established a thing with electric slide guitar. So people ask me how do you get this? How do you get this sound? And lap steel is pretty simple. And you tune it to an open chord and you put it in your lap and you have a steel and you make sure it doesn't make awful sounds, and then you go from there and you imitate horn players or you imitate singers or the instrument will tell you what it wants to play, what would be interesting in this particular section, whatever it is. So I would ask people, the people whose playing I really liked on different instruments, and then I'd transfer from one instrument to another. That was one of the things that really worked out good. So I would play, when I played with Jackson, I played horn lines.
Wow.
I played octave horn lines, because that was, there were so many people in the band, but we didn't have any horns. So I would play horn lines, octave horn lines, just like Freddie Roulette would play. I heard him play that, and I went, "Oh, that's good." catalog that one, and I'd hear different players play different things, and playing electric fiddle with James Taylor, I got to play horn lines with David Sanborn on a couple of tunes. So I would play a double stop, and he would add the third note, and we would do, and I'm not anywhere near the caliber of musician that David Sanborn is, but he was really, he loved the funk, he loved the funkiness, he loved,
Oh my God! I mean, dude. Listen.
Kind of a primitive approach to stuff. I mean, there's John Lee Hooker. John Lee Hooker's a guitar player. Paco de Lucia is also a guitar player. They're different.
Curtis Mayfield also, but we're not. Listen, we're not going to rush.
Oh yeah.
Listen, can we do set 2 next Saturday
Yeah.
at this time? Is that at noon? Does that work for you?
Next week?
Next Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay, because we have a lot more. We just cooked for an hour, and we have a lot more to get to. So it was such a great hang, dude. Thank you. I'll get you a copy of this later on.
Talk to you.
Bye. David Lindley, legend, and an amazing human being. We'll be right back with Christian Okoye right after this.